Hey everybody, welcome to the DBS Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always, my brother Brendan. Together we make movies with DBS Films. In today's episode, we're going to go ahead and hop into part 2 of Is Film School Worth It in 2022. The first part, we basically discuss what the pros and cons of film school are. In this episode, we want to go ahead and discuss what the pros and cons of not doing film school might be. Be sure to take a look at our Discord channel online because we make movies for our fans with our fans. So if you want to be part of the action, that is the place to be. So again, little caveat, we did not go to film school ourselves. We have been making films for 6 years now. We have 12 feature films, and this is really kind of where our experience comes in. But this is probably the number one question that I get a lot is, should I go to film school? What should we do? All of this stuff. So we wanted to go ahead and address it. Now, in the last episode, as I mentioned, we were basically looking at what the pros are, what the benefits of film school can be. In this episode, I wanted to go ahead and highlight what the alternative path is for not going to film school and potentially what to do. So I think really the first place to start is, one of the big overall negatives of film school is it costs a lot of money, and typically you will be in debt, and that is student debt, which again is going to stick with you forever. Typically, it's around $60,000 is what I'm seeing. I see low end of $20,000, but I see high end of $150,000. So that's a lot of money. And I think especially it's a lot of money for where we are at because of how many movies that lump sum of money can be. And the fact that making a movie realistically is the best experience. So I kind of want to start there and just kind of mention, while film school is great, especially if you're able to make projects, it's not going to give you as much experience as the projects themselves. Would you say that's kind of the case from at least what we're seeing? Because the film school environment really is a lukewarm version of what actual movie making can be.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between being the person pushing your project forward versus being someone involved in the project. In film school, you're going to have 100 different people working on one project as like a feature-length thing, or even shorts, you'll have a lot of people working on it. And there's really going to only be one person who's getting the most out of that project, and that is either the head producer or director who's pushing this project forward, or writer could also be beneficial. If you're not actively seeing your work made into an actual film, and you're kind of just sitting there working with lights or in the background doing anything, you're not going to see the full benefit. So you can go into film school and you can work on a lot of projects, but if you're not the one pushing, that train forward, pushing the whole process forward, you're not going to learn as much as others. So my advice would be to find something very technical, study the technical stuff, but also direct, produce, and write and edit stuff on the side. That totally works. But if you're not devoted to doing that on the side, then really there's no, you'll get connections from film school, but you're not going to learn how to make a movie. And that's where you want to be. The most benefit is hey, I have this idea, I want to turn it into a movie, and I want to upload it, and I want to get feedback on it. If that's your goal, then you don't need to go to film school, if that's what you want to do. Because you can, everything that you need to do to write a film, to shoot a film, and to upload a film is available online. Ton of tutorials, ton of YouTube videos, more material than we've ever had in the history of mankind. You have more access to stuff than anybody else has in history. But once again, you have to sit down, you have to learn, and you have to apply that stuff. You can sit here and watch YouTube videos till you turn blue in the face. But if you're not putting that stuff into practice, you're not getting better. You're not uploading things. So once again, it just comes down to, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? What do you feel most comfortable with?
So I think that's a great place to start, because I think really one of the issues with film school that I see now is because of how fast technology is moving, because of how fast these tech companies are moving when it comes to streaming platforms, when it comes to the industry as a whole, we usually see institutions, whether it's Hollywood or the film industry, are just way behind. I mean, one of the big things is, no one's using film anymore. It's all digital, it's media. And I think one of the biggest things is they're focused on a good 5 to 10 years behind where you're actually at. So like what they're basically teaching you, or what the process is typically, it takes a lot more time for them to do it. And the reason for it is they have no reason to adapt. There's no reason for them to adapt because there's so much money in both of those systems that they can stay where they're at and they can be perfectly fine. Where there's not any money is when you're on the bleeding edge, which is where we're at, in the sense of the new shifting landscape when it comes to creating and making your own movies, when it comes to involving your community, when it comes to community building, as set there. And I think one of the things that I would look towards the most is the rise of content creators. I think content creators are the closest things to filmmakers that we see out there nowadays, more so than someone that just specializes in one or two things. If you're a YouTube person that's filming your own stuff, editing it and uploading it, you're doing more experience in filmmaking than someone who's just sitting down and learning about it in a class. So do you want to talk about how one film school in Hollywood can kind of be behind the pace of what you're seeing, and a lot of the tech companies with the streaming platforms and things like that are, they move at lightning speed, and really our model is trying to stay ahead of that pace?
Yeah, I mean, everything's just being disrupted right now. Everyone wants their streaming platform. Everyone wants, have streaming content. And I definitely think that, where we're at right now is going to be completely different in 5 years and 10 years. I think that low budget movies, if you can make a movie for under 50K, we're going to see sort of a renaissance in that movie making, because you're going to start to see people who are making 2 to 3 movies a year get very, very good at making movies very, very quickly. So the next 4 to 5 years, those people who are making a lot of content, who are getting better, are going to see better stories. They're going to see better movies. They're going to see success. As long as you keep making these things for cheap, you're going to get rewarded for that. Because right now, it's very easy to make a movie and throw it up on a streaming platform. And I say it's very easy to make a movie as in, if I'm a streaming platform, I'm going to throw $500,000 to $1 million to anybody. I can get a movie and I can get content, right? So all these streaming platforms have a ton of content. Amazon has content. Tubi has an absolute massive amount of content. Hulu, Netflix, they all have a ton of content. I think the difference that's going to start to separate them as it becomes more competitive is who has really good content. Which platform has the best stories? And really the only platform right now that has consistent success with really good stories is HBO. Everybody else has their hits, but majority of them are misses. And those misses are millions of dollars. Well, once we get to those misses are going to be under 50K, and they're going to start to be able to get some really good stories, some really cool stories, some really unique stories for under $50,000. Well, you can command, if you have a good story, if you have built a good world, you can command whatever price you want, and you'll get into a bidding war. But you have to have a good story in order to do that. Just generic stuff is not going to cut it, because no longer can you just make a movie and put it in Blockbuster and put it in DVDs, or just put it on all these platforms, Hulu, Netflix, like you could back in like 2013. You have to make something really good now. And that's a good thing for the industry, because we're going to get much more talented people. The cream's going to rise to the top. But, if you're going back to the film school model where you got to make a movie for $5 million minimum, you're going to shoot one page a day, I don't think it's as scalable. I don't think you're going to learn as much. And I don't think it's a business model that works in the next 5 years. I just don't. Unless you have the right connections, unless you're Christopher Nolan, unless you're coming in here and just making absolutely bangers of stories, I don't think it is a viable business model, in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think the whole movie chains in general are at risk. Like I don't really consider myself a reason to kind of go back to the movies when I can watch any movie I want in the comfort of my own home and not pay $30 for, any kind of snacks or beverages or whatever I want to enjoy. So I do think the Hollywood system, again, is going to continue to have their bumps and grinds, but realistically, there's so much money in that Hollywood system that they'll be perfectly fine. They'll handle it easily. What's gonna feel the pinch is basically all the people working for the Hollywood system. So, we mentioned in the first podcast basically what the pros and cons of that Hollywood system are. I think the pros and cons of this is, one, you're going to keep, ideally, if you're the producer, you're going to keep the rights to the film. And I think that's huge. Long-term reoccurring revenue. We get someone who makes 3 movies a year for 10 years. I'm going to say by the end of the 10 years, they're going to have enough to live off of. Like, unless these movies aren't getting distribution and unless these movies are, not going anywhere, I would say if you create content for 10 years straight, you will be able to have a portfolio that will sustain you as a filmmaker. Potentially. Again, there's a lot of details in that question and whatnot, but that's kind of the option is, are you going to take 10 years to break into the Hollywood system and get those positions up there? Or would you rather take 10 years so then you have the creative abilities? What I will say though, is the Hollywood system is going to be much more show up here and do this. The filmmaker entrepreneur system, especially when you first start, is going to be a complete stressful nightmare of minefields that you have no clue about. And again, one of the reasons that we were so resilient is we had other businesses that were able to generate the revenue for us, so we can work on this completely without it having to generate any revenue itself. And it's something I think we're both really, really passionate about. But if you don't have those two elements, it becomes incredibly hard. So do you want to talk about how, if you are able to put in the work and make it happen, that this could actually be a better payoff long term? But I think the downside of it is, we can hand you a manual that says do this, this, and this, but it's so much work when you are period the driving force. I think a lot of indie filmmakers, what do we hear all the time here? Oh, I need a producer. I need a producer. I need a producer. You are the producer. Like, there's no such thing as a producer really in the indie level. You should just be going ahead and doing it. I can't see the value that they're really offering. It's something that you, as the filmmaker, should be taking under your umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, if you have experience, if you can go out and make 2 to 3 movies a year and upload those movies, and that was what you're going to do for the next 3 to 4 years, I would say you're in a much better spot not going to film school. Instead of going to film school, make 8 movies, make 10 movies. But do I think that the majority of people can do that? No. I would think maybe it's probably less than 1%. So that's where it comes down to whether or not film school is worth it. If you were to sit here and say with 100%, hold a gun to my head, I will make 10 movies in 4 years. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it my all. I will hustle. I will grind. I will do whatever it takes to make those 10 movies and upload them. Then I say that person, don't go to film school. But I don't think, I think that's extremely rare. I think it's extremely rare to come into one of these things, get your ass absolutely kicked, and, just mentally and physically just beat down, and, finish shooting, take a day, and the next day you're like, all right, I'm ready to work on the next one. Let's go. And then you once again get absolutely beat to a pulp, and you blood, sweat, and tears for 8 days, physically and mentally exhausted. You finish that and you're like, all right, I'm ready to throw more money into this. I want to make another one. And you got to do that 10 times in a row. And these 10 movies may not make any money. They may get 1 star to death. Your ego is going to be front and center. And I just don't think a lot of people have that in them. I think they'll make 1 movie, they'll quit. They'll make 2 movies, they'll quit. And if that's the case, if that's how you feel, if you're not going to give it your all, and when I say all, I mean physically, mentally, and like monetary, like you're going to have to give all your money to this. If you can't do that, then go to film school. And it's a safer option. You're still going to have to work extremely, extremely hard, but it's not as crazy as this. But I do think you can accelerate your timeline much faster making your own movies. I think you're putting yourself in a place to succeed much faster than film school. But it comes with a caveat. If you cannot make 10 movies in 4 years, then go to film school or explore other options.
100%. I mean, and again, there's a lot of mystery, I think a lot of people who haven't started their own business or understand that no one gives you that guide really. No one says, hey, here's what it is. Of course, there's courses and things like that, but until you've been through it yourself, you really don't know. So that is the major risk. But, like you were saying, yeah, if someone can do it, by far, that's going to be the better element, but it's just so rare to really see because it's a very, very hard thing to do. So I think one thing that might be actually an easier way, and this is something that I'm more toying with now as a recommendation, is I think nowadays with the ability of content creation, YouTube, TikTok, social media, I'm going to explore two options that I think people have for dabbling into the filmmaking industry. And it's actually, surprise, surprise, is some things we do. So the first thing I want to talk about, FF marketing services. So basically, one of the things that we do is commercial videos. And I think you'll hear this actually a lot in the indie film industry. A lot of people who have made a type of living work within the commercial space of basically making videos, making content. I highly recommend you learn how to do ads and things like that, because that's a double whammy. So you can basically learn how to market things if you're able to do videos. So basically our pitch is not only will we make the videos for you, but we'll also handle like Facebook ads, SEO, things like that. And these are all things that I utilize for DBLs organically now. But I think doing commercial videos is a great way to get started, especially with your own production house. I think you have a full-time job, you start a side business making these videos, you ramp up that business so it improves your video skills, and then, you know, twice a year you make a movie, 3 times a year you make a movie. I think that is a route where if you're able to at least manage stuff with clients, manage shoots with clients, I think it sets you up for an actual film shoot. Because here's the biggest thing, man. I would say I would be so worried for the person who's hearing this and they go for their very first film shoot, they have no clue what it's like, it's just going to be a train wreck, just because, again, that's how it works. Like, you have to learn. So would you say that there's ways that you can dabble and get into the film industry by having your own business that's video production? And I think it's something we see a lot, where a lot of people who are trying to make it in, that's a way where they can at least set up a home base and, you know, at least survive within a parallel industry.
Yeah, I think anytime that you can get paid to write, to shoot and direct movies, or to edit footage, if you can figure out how to get paid for that kind of stuff, you're really putting yourself in a place to succeed, because you're getting paid to actually learn and improve. If you can find copywriting jobs or writing jobs, or if you can, you know, self-publish some of your own books, you're getting paid to essentially hone your writing craft. And essentially FF is basically, you know, us working on, if you can go in there and work with people who have never been in front of a camera before, who are very nervous, and they're all you have is their office lighting to work with, just very bland environments. If you can go in there and you can work with these guys and make them give a comfortable performance, that's your job. Being a director, working with actors, is going to be a lot easier. And also, if you can make those scenes and those interviews look cinematic, look appealing on these very bland services. A lot of these are like dental offices or chiropractic offices, just very difficult to get very cinematic shots. If you can make it look really good, then going on set is just going to be much easier. Your cinematography skills are going to get much better. And I still think finished uploaded stuff, as far as like cinematography, is a metric you should track. The more I have behind the camera, the better it is. And that's no matter if cinematic or just shooting corporate stuff. It doesn't matter. It's just, you're going to get better with reps, with time. The last movie we did is a found footage movie. It was the best looking movie we've made yet. That makes no sense. A cinematic movie using cinematic lenses should look better. It's not the case. Just because I doubled my hours, you know, on set, because we just made a whole nother movie. And then as far as editing, once again, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what you're editing. If you can edit something and make a very boring interview look engaging, have fun, and cut away to B-rolls, montage stuff up, roll with like audio over it, if you can make that look really, really good, that stuff translates directly to making cinematic movies. So really, if you're not going to go to film school, the goal would be to make 8 to 10 movies in 4 years, but also try and get paid for either writing, shooting movies, directing, producing, and also editing. If you can do that, then you are in a very, very good place to succeed.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think the other element to kind of explore that I would also recommend is, again, you know, nowadays, I think it's because, you know, the film industry likes to be a little bit pretentious, but there's no difference between watching a movie and watching TikTok for an hour. There just isn't. It's content. And I think one of the strangleholds that movies had back in the 90s, back in the early 2000s, is how would you watch content for a long extended period of time? Your internet wasn't good enough to download anything. YouTube was basically just cat videos and these really, really weird, strange stuff. It wasn't there. Now you have more hours being watched. There's more hours being watched by like a Mr. Beast video than the entire Super Bowl, when it comes to just the amount of time watched there. So a lot of these other channels are growing. And I think my other biggest recommendation would be look at utilizing that, specifically look at building a community. I think what's going to end up happening, I think we're on the forefront of it really, is you're going to see a lot of community focused studios where if you're part of our community, if you work with us, you're going to be in our movies, you're going to be on our sets. And I think that is slowly emerging with us. But the way that I also see it is you'll see a lot of big YouTubers after they've put in, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of their life into growing their channel. There's one where now he's making, I think it's like $1 million horror movie because of his successful Kickstarter. None of his money, none of that stuff there, but he was able to build the community. And regardless of when that movie gets finished, he has a built-in audience for that. So I think one of the other areas that I would look is try to become a content creator, try to stream things, try to make shorts that you see. And I think you get a lot of people, like, it's pretty funny when I listen to different podcasts or whatnot, people talk about social media, and they like to stick their nose up and be like, oh, that's so, it's like, I don't need to, people should just come and watch my movie. That's not the case anymore. That's not how it happens. You, one, need to go out there and find them. And two, you need to give them a reason to interact. And I think the reason why you see a lot of YouTubers, streamers, and things like that, it's not necessarily the content they're putting out, it's the connection. I mean, I know me, any kind of behind the scenes for indie productions, I'm all about it. I'll watch the whole thing, then I'll watch your movie, then I'll support you. All of those things add up. And I think nowadays, the approach would either be go the commercial route, start your own business to help you generate funds and work on this. And then, it also hones your craft. I think the other thing would be try and create content, try and work with content creators, try and do this other element to build your community. Because there is a lot of, basically TikTok filmmaker pages. They have millions of followings and all they are is a cinematographer, They just do different shoots and things like that. There's one guy that is like Steadicam Red or something like that, where he's just a Steadicam operator, but he has 1 million followers because he's showing them what they're doing. So I think there's a huge element out there that filmmakers like to turn their nose down at. And it's something where it's such a necessity. And if you do it right, it will literally build your entire foundation for filmmaking. So what are your thoughts on embracing the old social media content creation element of it? Because I mean, again, that's a very low barrier. Anyone can upload and be on a massive multi-billion-dollar platform.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to you just got to wear different hats. But I think, one of the things that is the most beneficial is to, try and find your audience before your movie gets released. And I see a lot of filmmakers out there, especially indie filmmakers, who never find their audience. And, their films never get seen. And there's a lot of indie filmmakers who will try and find their audience after their movie's out, which is also a mistake because it's just difficult to do that. Everyone thinks that they need a product in order to build a community, or they have to have a good product to build a community. And I think both are fake, or not fake, but false. I think if you're very new, and you don't have very good products, you're not going to have a lot of movies, or your movies are not going to be the greatest. Focus and engage and find people who like low budget horror movie, who can provide feedback and who want to see the journey. I love watching other filmmakers behind the scenes, podcasts. I love the scene. I love that stuff. Any kind of updates. I follow a lot of local filmmakers as well. And I get excited for the movies when they're about to come out. Because if you're following them along in their journey, then you're more invested in their film. And that would be the case for a lot of things. If you don't think you're going to have a very good film, and this is your first couple of films, invest in the journey. Don't worry about the film. Now, if you have multiple films, if you're kind of, getting, your flywheel starting to turn, you're able to crank these things out, then you can obviously have an easier bit of time because you can go find people who like indie horror movies and you can show them the product that you have. And if you don't, even if you still don't have a very good product or it's very low budget, these people exist. We have a huge community of almost 300,000 people on TikTok. We have almost 12,000 people in the Discord that absolutely love low budget indie horror movies. I will tell you right now, I absolutely love low budget indie horror movies. 95% of the movies that I watch are under $50,000, and I am not alone. The found footage horror group is absolutely massive. There is a lot of people who love indie horror movies. Tubi is extremely popular and has built a huge foundation on low budget indie horror movies. So if you don't think you're there yet, you think people aren't going to like your product, don't worry about that, man. Just try and find those people, the people that really love low budget indie horror stuff, and you will be able to start to cultivate that community. And the best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time to start is right now. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to really find your fan base. You got to cultivate that fan base and hold on to them for dear life, because they are going to be the lifeblood of your filmmaking career.
I mean, 100%. That really is just the case. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a while for you to basically get to the point where you'll, see the rewards of it. Again, we've been doing this for 6 years, and it's only now, it's only right now that we're seeing really a lot of the movement there. So to kind of sum it up, if you're going to go the non-film school way, your goal should be make as many movies as humanly possible. If you can guarantee that in 5 years, you can make 10 films, we're going to give you the green light. The hard part is making those films. In your way, in making that journey of those 5 films, you want to be finding ways where you can get paid to do this, so you can allocate more time to it. And the second thing is you want to build your community. If you're able to look at it from that strategy, understanding that you will work harder, no one's going to tell you what to do, and it's all going to be your responsibility, and you're like, yes, I want this. This is the mindset to have. If you want to have more of a structure element to it, film school can definitely make more sense. So, do you really see that? Again, this is a question and internal debate that someone needs to have with themselves. But I would say, based on the two and based on what we know, the non-film school route, to me, makes a lot more sense if you're motivated for it. And if you can put that hustle in and you can make these things come together, which again is very, very rare, I think you can allocate that the other way, knowing that it's going to be quite the hustle, and it's not easy. It's been a grind for these 6 years, and you know what? I already know we're going to grind for another 6 years, and we're just not going to stop.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to your risk tolerance, where you are in life, how comfortable you feel with, putting a lot of work into this kind of stuff. But I think film school is going to require an upfront investment. You're probably going to have to put in almost 6 figures for tuition. And it's going to take a long time to be in charge of your project. It's going to be a long, slow burn. That being said, it's going to be, if you're willing to work, it's going to be, much more steady income. You're going to work in the industry. You're going to be a part of the industry. You have networking connections that you could build. I think it's going to be a much safer path. I think if you go to film school and you understand what you're getting into and you work as hard as you possibly can to build connections, to build products, to build movies, to get your work out there, I think it's a safer route. But it's going to take longer. It's going to require a very large upfront investment. I think if you're trying to do your own movie and do your own indie films and upload your own indie stuff, the investment right away, unless you're trying to shoot a $200,000 movie, is going to be less than film school. And you could spread that through diversification to make multiple movies. For the tuition, that a 4-year tuition to film school, you should be able to make 4 or 5 movies, from that tuition if you're doing your indie route. Now, getting that money is going to be a little bit more difficult, but if you're smart, you can probably swing it. You have the opportunity of success, having a movie that takes off and explodes. That opportunity is there. So you're literally scratching off lottery tickets. If you get a hit, then your career is exploding much faster than it would in film school. I think you can learn a lot more. You're going to be in the school of hard knocks, but you're going to learn a lot more, a lot faster. But that being said, I think the rate of burnout, the rate of failure is going to be extremely, extremely high. I would wager probably in the 99 percentile of filmmakers who try and do indie films are going to fail. And that's just because of how difficult it is, how much money it takes and how difficult it is to find this community, cultivate this community. I just think that there's going to be 1% of indie filmmakers that make it. And this is no statistical evidence, but the ones that I follow, the ones that are continually making movies, I say movies, they make at least one a year, is very, very small. And I follow a lot of indie filmmakers. So your burnout and your failure rate on the indie sets is going to be much higher than it would be in film school.
That's definitely the case. And regardless of what your choice is, more power to you. We're going to be here. We're going to support any kind of filmmakers because it's a hard process. We have a lot more information. Hopefully you find our podcast, very beneficial when it comes to just laying out what potential paths are and different pitfalls. You can also take a look at our Discord online because that is the place to be. You can always DM us if you have any kind of questions whatsoever. But again, this is one of the biggest topics out there. I think it's always going to be a topic in filmmaking. And the problem with it is it's a gray line. There's this area of, could it be worth it or could it not be worth it? And I think a lot of times when we're looking at the, industry and people who are talking about it, they typically are very one-sided. You either don't do film school or you do film school. So we wanted to give you our opinion again on what the two elements of it are. Hopefully you have found it very entertaining. Again, be sure to take a look at our Discord online, take a look at our movies online. But until then, have a good one.